Good afternoon, everybody. We welcome you to this afternoon session of teaching session with Dr. James Forbes. I will introduce him in just a moment. We're delighted that you are here. This is really pretty loud. My name is Bob Hundley. I am one of the pastors here at First Church, and this afternoon is going to go about 90 minutes. We're going to break around 3 o'clock, at which time there's going to be a reception up in the parlor with some books. If you do not happen to own one of these books, there are 10 left. So highest bidder gets them, I think. But we have a time when you can have your book signed by Dr. Forbes and then just enjoy a time of fellowship. We have been studying this book. If you happen to be a guest this afternoon, the church has been studying this book throughout the Lenten journey, and I think somewhere around 100, 120 people have been engaged in conversation about Whose Gospel? A Concise Guide to Progressive Protestantism. This evening at 7 o'clock, we're going to have a worship experience here in the church where we have invited the entire community to join with us, and Dr. Forbes will be preaching, and then in the morning he will be preaching at both services, at both the 9:15 and the 11 a.m. service. If you have done some looking online, and if you want more information about Dr. Forbes, I would point you to the website of the Riverside Church in New York City, and under the staff column, there is a full biography of Dr. Forbes listed there as Pastor Emeritus. He served there for nearly 20 years. He is a renowned pastor, a renowned preacher, a teacher, a social justice activist, a prophet, and also engaged in healing ministries. And we are delighted to have him with us. And I would invite us to join together in a word of prayer before we begin. Will you pray? Gracious God, we give you thanks for this congregation and the way in which we have opened this opportunity to not only our congregation, but to the entire community. We're grateful for the willingness of Dr. Forbes to come and be with us and to lead us, to teach us, to be a sojourner along with us in learning about your word and about your role in our lives and our lives for the greater good of our community. So be with us in our thinking, in our listening, in Dr. Forbes' speaking. We're grateful for this opportunity. In Christ's name, amen. Dr. Forbes, welcome to First Church.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. May our first words together be sung in the familiar words of Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. Melt me, melt, mold me, mold, fill me, fill, and then, Lord, use me, use me. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. Pastor Hunley, other members of the staff with whom I met yesterday, and to members of this congregation and any visiting friends who are with us today. I am honored to have the privilege to be with you, and I come with the recognition that this is a very special opportunity. Anyone who has spent much of the Lenten season reading my book, these are very special people. But in a real sense, because you are already aware of the issues that I want to talk about, I have come not simply to inform you about these matters, but I have come to recruit each one of you for an event that is going to take place in 2018. And let me explain what that event is. And when I say to recruit you, I could say it is to recruit you to be human race activists. Not black activists, not white activists, not Latino activists, human race activists. But let me explain the particular event that focuses the conversation I wish to share with you today. I told, I think, the group yesterday that it is my real understanding that in heaven there is a tradition of rewarding persons who have given their blood for the sake of the cause of justice, martyred because of their convictions as well as their actions, that every 40 years in heaven, such persons are granted a special opportunity, and that opportunity is to see that that which they gave their blood, sweat, and tears for is actually bearing fruit. Isn't that a wonderful gift? When you've given yourself for something, and sometimes you only get halfway there, and you even wonder whether with your demise the energy of the movement will cease. 40 years later, for heaven to arrange an opportunity for people who are martyred to look down upon the earth and to see your labors were not in vain. Well, in the light of this, you will understand that people used to ask about our president, President Obama. And they are amazed that he should have been elected with such euphoric response at that point, but that there has been a steady erosion of the spirit of celebration. And people, what's the deal? I mean, were people really that committed to overcoming racial boundaries and categories? Or is it that there was a momentary, shall I call it, spiritual hijacking of their minds to bring them to do that which made it possible for him to be elected? So I now offer this explanation. You want to know how he got elected? Given mixed attitudes in our nation? Well, the 40-year period came. 1968, 2008. So, Robert Kennedy was called forth. Bobby, you said that there is likely to be a black president in the United States before too long. This is the 40th year of your martyrdom. I want you to get ready to look down on the earth. you will see that you were a speaker of truth. And although you were a powerful person, you dared to speak truth to power. This 40th year, you're going to see your labors were not in vain. At the same time, Dr. King, Martin Luther King, was invited. As Dr. King, you met on April 3rd, 1968, at Charles Mason Memorial Temple, they called it, Mason Memorial Temple. And you stood in the pulpit and you said to these people, I would like to live a long life. But yes, longevity has its place. But it doesn't matter to me now. I have been to the mountain. And I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And of course, the next day, he was assassinated. But that promise was still hanging in the air. So, since Bobby Kennedy and Dr. King were assassinated in the same year, they were able to come together, black and white together, to be able to look over the balcony of heaven. So in 2008, it must have been a Tuesday, I guess. It's the election day in November. Martin Luther King Jr. and Bobby Kennedy looked down. And you think we were euphoric. Can you imagine how Bobby Kennedy in eternity felt? And can you imagine how Dr. King felt when they looked down and they saw that there was a black man in the United States, born to mixed race ancestry, an African and a European, a child of the struggle of the Revolutionary War, and also a child of slavery, now elevated to the position that is considered by many to be the most powerful in the world. And Bobby Kennedy, a son of royalty, a person next to the president who had also been assassinated. Can you imagine that this guy, who though royal in blood, nevertheless found himself longing for the elimination of these barriers that existed between people on account of race and of class. So where's the musician, my musician buddy? Yeah, Eric, wouldn't it be wonderful if some of us could imagine a kind of Rigoletto opera in which Bobby could speak to King about how he was feeling about what had happened. And King could speak back. Bobby would probably do the tenor part, and King would probably do the baritone part. And they sing back together of their joy for the manifestation of God's kingdom coming on earth, even as it was in heaven. Somebody might write that up. But here's why I'm here today. I'm here because since I am into the legend-making business, imaginary interpretation of truth that may be told in fictional form, but truer sometimes than the accuracy of other accounts. I am here because if that happened on the 40th year, it would make sense for me to revise my story and say that it happened on the 50th year. Now, 50 is very special. It's very special to me because June 19th, 2014, my beautiful bride from San Antonio, Texas, and I, at the Riverside Church, celebrated the 50th anniversary of our marriage. And we renewed our vows. Robert Seymour, who had married us, he's getting real old now, with his daughter helping him up on the stage, came and said to us those vows. This is such a special moment. 50 years. And after we had done that, my wife, who is a musician, walked out with her off-white gown and changed into the black uniform that members of the Ebony Ecumenical Ensemble use when they sing. So the first 45 minutes were music and saying of vows, and the other hour was my wife directing the Ebony Ecumenical Ensemble, symbolizing that while she was grateful for our marriage, she also was celebrating 36 years of her choirs singing, and it was a glorious moment. Oh, in fact, after we had finished the wedding, renewal of vows, Betty and I went off on our second honeymoon. We went to Vienna and to Salzburg and to Prague. Oh, what a wonderful celebration. We almost needed a chaperone. 50 is important. I mean, I missed the number. 40 is not the date that the big thing happens. The big thing happens on the 50th anniversary. Bobby and Martin slain in 1968 and 78, 88, 98, 08, 18. The 50th anniversary of the assassination of Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. That's going to take place. And I have been given intimation as to what is supposed to happen during that time. There is going to be a grand and glorious biracial organization, and there will be the celebration of the liberation of our nation from its racist understanding. And the parade, there's going to be a parade, and the parade will be black and white together, as we used to sing about it in the movement. And the parade will move up to wherever it is in the particular village or city or region, the place that in that area most symbolizes the commitment to the beloved community, the commitment to liberty and justice for all, the place in the community that has demonstrated that even though we may not have gotten to the promised land, that we shall have advanced that promised land, and wherever, and it's possible that there may not be another place in Grand Rapids that has more consistently and in tangible ways given evidence that we would like to see more of the world house that Dr. King talked about. Or we would like to see a more perfect union that Robert Kennedy. This church could be but let me ask you, if the parade, see, we gather someplace, and we will gather from all across the town, from the ghettos that are there, ghettos of affluence and ghettos of poverty. We will gather to that central place that we might look up and say, well, I do not know what words we will say, but we will look up and say, Bobby, Martin, and whatever. I'm not sure what the chant will be, but we will join heaven in celebrating to him that the values for which they gave their lives have been nourished by blood, sweat, and tears, and energy, and effort, and resources, and that we may not have yet gotten to the promised land fully, but that we shall have moved so that Bobby Kennedy and Martin King would say, thank you. Don't let up. We've got a journey to go. But thank you for having continued that struggle for which we gave our lives. So I'm here to recruit you to at least be a part of that event. One way to be a part of it is to spread the story of heaven's celebration such that we could make it clear God is not unmindful of our labors of love. And even if we die on the journey, even if we die on a Good Friday, Easter is coming. 1, 2, 3. So, I want you to be aware that for the next 3 years, you could help spread the story that, guess what? In the next 3 years, we're going to see an amazing preparation for the celebration of their dedication of their lives to liberation. That almost rhymed. So spread the word. Also, begin to ask, how can we refresh our memories of the content of the mission of Bobby Kennedy and of Martin King? Will there be study groups? Will there be artistic representation? Will there be literature? Will there be mini parades? Will there be action groups? Will there be denouncement of the barriers to the new age? Will there be celebration wherever we see people rising above ethnic particularity to become a part of the human race? So you could do that. Tell the story. Or help do what Father Divine in New York said. He said, some folks just preach the gospel. He said, my job is to tangibilitate the gospel. So the question is, we may celebrate the legend, but we may also tangibilitate the call to justice. Thy kingdom come on earth, even as it is in heaven. Some of you may need to engage in a legislative agenda. being aware that it is not simply some person who had a bad upbringing about race and said nasty things. No, more serious than the awfulest thing ever said. And one of them was like, yeah, did you hear something? This jacket talked about Michelle Obama looking like she comes from that planet of the apes. You think that's bad? No, not compared to systems that have built up concrete evidence that one race is better than the other. And you can look at the distribution of resources, you can look at residences, you can look at jobs, you can look at art, you can look at language. So some of us may be engaged in trying our best to make sure that it is not so, and that legislative agendas will go before local city councils and state legislatures and district jurisdictional policy making, all the way to the Congress, which by that time will have been mysteriously brought together beyond the particularity. A legislative agenda. But because we know that you cannot legislate love and justice, there will be efforts to make sure that social methods of critiquing where we are. In fact, for the next 3 years, people will be denied the opportunity to, you won't be able on King's birthday to put on the record, I have a dream that one day black boys and girls and white boys and girls will join hands. And no, you won't be able to play that nice piece, that beautiful piece of King, unless you in your community have started a economic justice and racial relations audit. Race and economic justice audit, that's it. Which means that whoever the urbanologists are, or the sociologists, or the psychologists, or the economists, will put together a plumb line list of principles that would reflect what Dr. King and Bobby would have wished to see concrete in our time. And that every year, like when we have our stewardship campaigns and we put a thermometer up, we will not declare that we have reached the kingdom, but every year at the King celebration, or maybe, if you're really serious, at the State of the Union address, a report will be made, whereas these are the standards by which we determine what a truly just and post-racial and post-sexist society looks like. We have commissioned a racial and economic justice commission. We have provided sufficient resources to do research. And whereas the economic gap was this, after the first year it's this, after third year it's this, and we ain't going to get there in a long time, maybe till we get to heaven, but to be able to say, in our community, the racial justice audit indicates that the gap, economic gap, has been reduced by this percent. And we will clap because
We have not yet reached the promised land, but we are incrementally creeping our way a little closer to that which God has called us to do. We will set up about employment. The median salary of blacks and Latinos and European immigrants and Native Americans and white people. We will look at how that's going. The salaries. Someone who is expert will do an analysis of the declining social dysfunctionality in communities. And they already, as in a book called The Spirit Level, they've done some research and they can tell you that the disproportionate sharing of resources is directly proportional to the dysfunctionality. The wider the gap of inequality, the greater the levels of dysfunctionality. People will engage in artistic revolution. Songs will be sung that symbolize we're coming closer together. In fact, who's in the legislature? Is there any public elected official in here today? Any former public official? Where's my musician friend? He's kind of taking care. He's not up there now? What's his name? Eric. Eric, where are you? Eric? Well, what's your name? Debbie. Deb. Oh, Deb. Deb, I would like to make a proposal. I said I'm recruiting now. I would like to make a proposal that by the time that we elect a new president, and Mr. Obama, if he should live to reach that point, that at the celebration of the ending of his administration, we shall have passed through the Congress that whereas the Star-Spangled Banner is the national anthem, and whereas we used to think of God of our fathers as the national hymn, but it doesn't really function that way, that perhaps as a symbol that the cultural enrichment is now coming from both directions, maybe Lift Every Voice and Sing could be offered as a national hymn. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. But before we get to that, we would have to have interracial massed choirs in every city that we could think of to get together to learn it. Not only, there it is, thank you, brother. Not only to learn it in its hymnic form, but to learn it There's a Roland Carter setting that my wife's choir sings. Oh, that we have come over the road. I mean, da 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 da. Sing a song. You ought to hear the Ebony Ecumenical Ensemble sing the Roland Carter setting of Lift Every Voice and Sing. But to have, especially interracial choirs meet, not only to sing that one, but to sing the songs of liberty that have come from all of the ethnic groups represented in the nation as much as they can, pull them together. There is no aspect of life that has not longed for freedom and justice. The United States is a revolutionary people. We rebelled against bondage as a people together. So we will sing some of the patriotic songs of the Revolution. When Johnny come marching home again, hurrah. Oh, is that the Revolution or the Civil War? World War I. The concert will be made of the musical etchings of the spirit of liberty in the history of the United States. But by the time we get to the inauguration or the end of this administration, Tish, I met her yesterday. Do you imagine, try to think with me, how would we go about trying to propose that whereas we treated that brother like a dog, thank God he lived. And as a symbol that shall ever stand in the history of the United States, when we sing that song, we will think of all of the struggles to which all of our ethnic groups have passed. What would be the process by which we might start such an effort? Notice it's only a symbol, but symbols matter. What would we do? What do you think? She knows that this is a rhetorical question. Artistry. That leading the parade that day will be people who have been designated as being at the bottom of the social economic condition in our community. And remembering that Jesus says the first shall be last and the last shall be first. They will have honored seats in the parade. And they will be there when we sing, "We shall overcome." Or "We are one in the Spirit, we are one in the Lord." I do not know who is at the bottom, but they will have special conveyance, transportation modes on that day at the front. Now, all of this is, can you imagine? Thank you for the copy. Could you imagine America after we sing the Star Spangled, oh, say, can you see? We're going to sing that. But then we will have a hymn, and it'll end, God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God and true to our native land. There's nothing in this that favors the Republicans or the Democrats or the blacks or the whites. It's just lift every voice, which sounds like it's coming out of the gospel. Every voice. Now, Pastor, you wonder, well, we came because we were hoping we're going to get a teaching. Well, this is the preamble to the teaching, all right? It is to say, if I have come here to try to recruit you for this big parade, any one of the aspects of it, then it makes sense that I should provide for you a biblical and theological foundation for the parade. And I'm ready to do that now. And by the way, tonight I'm going to preach, hopefully, an appropriate Methodist sermon. But today we're doing this together. So if you can find the Pew Bible, and turn to Genesis chapter 3. When you shall have found it, I ask you to join me in reading this text. And I tried to find a good place to cut off. You can't cut this one off. So just join me. When you get tired, somebody else will sing like, my wife calls that staggered breathing, you know. Somebody keep it going while somebody else. But anyway, will you join me in reading this story? Because I think I want to say that this is where the seed of injustice, prejudice, discrimination. Would you join me in reading now the serpent? Just let's stop right there for a moment, and then I'm going to read the rest of it myself. If you go back to the top, notice where this all started. He said that God said the serpent was crafty, tricky, duplicitous. Duplicity, untruth. He was more like that than anybody. He said to the woman, "Did God say that?" If you can't underline this, but when you get home in your study Bible, underline, "Did God say?" Did God say is interrogative. It is designed to counteract the indicative of what God had said. When what God has said starts to be reflected upon interrogatively in terms of maybe what God said is not the case. That's why he introduced the interrogative about what God had said. You shall not eat of the tree. The woman said to the servant, "We may eat of the fruit." That's what the Lord, that's the indicative. We may eat of the fruit of the tree in the garden, but God said, you asked, did God say? She said, but God said, "You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die." But the servant, adversative, right? But the servant said to the woman, "You will not die," which rhymes with "you lie." God lies. God lied when he said you will die. You will not. He's lying. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened. Eyes opened. And you will be like God. The marginal note says gods. You will have a similar divinity as the one who now lords it over you, your creator. And you'll know the difference between good and evil. They already know the difference between good and evil. Good is believing and doing what God says. Evil is disbelieving and disobeying and distancing ourselves from that which God has ordained. They already know. So what is already present is projected as a future aspiration. So when the woman saw, notice he says your eyes will be open. She sees according to her delight. When she saw underscore, the tree was good. You will know the difference between good and evil. These words keep mixing back and forth for food. That it was a delight to what fascinates and attracts the eye. What the eye sees. And that the tree was to be desired to make one wise. The longing, which is an appropriate thing, to have the wisdom of the gods, to know in ourselves what the ultimate reality is. She took of the fruit and ate some and gave some to her husband who was with her. Then, here again, rather than seeing through their own eyes, the text says when you eat of this, the truth of God says your eyes will be open. So then the eyes of both of them were opened. The devil says, you know, not going to happen to you. You know, you already see. And they knew that they were naked. Basically, that which from a theological perspective was natural, induces shame and guilt. natural in the eyes of God is unnatural to eyes of people, especially when they have been in serious dialogue with the devil. Their eyes were open and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. When my soul feels exposed as unwise, not good, inadequate, deserving of condemnation, of judgment. In other words, when it feels unworthy of continuing to live, if I can find myself, I'm not going to bother these trees, some fig leaves that I can put together that will cover up my sense of unworthiness, my sense of not being quite adequate, my sense of needing to project a different reality. When I take this black skin of mine, made out of fig leaves of my own construction, I am attempting to live what appears to be better than what would be if I were just naked. The reason I took myself as an example, if you do the same thing, if you take whiteness and wrap yourself up in it such that it makes you look much better than you really are, or so that it makes you look better than the others at least, or so it means that you are beyond judgment, you are beyond critique, that basically God has to acknowledge that at last you and God are on the same plane, and in fact, you all are colleagues now in a very special way. Pastor, racism is about human efforts to make it appear that some are more deserving than others, and that some are more righteous than others, and that some are wiser than others. And racism is taking the deception started by the devil, who makes us question the God who says all of these children are mine. And guess what? They all come up in here naked. But if I do something to make myself a fig leaf that leaves the other almost, if not naked, tattered, in rags, this is dehumanizing of other people, while I am dressed up in the fig leaves that I have made. That starts trouble all over the world. I'm not going to have you read any further on this, but I will say, the Lord says, look, because y'all have done this, to the serpent he speaks, you're going to be hated by all the people. Some people love snakes, but most people find it. Even on television, when they put them around their necks and things. And I will put enmity between you and the woman. And it said to the woman, I will greatly increase your pangs in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children, and your desire will be for your husband, and he shall rule over you, or otherwise abuse your human dignity. Not too many young people. I'd like to know, who is the person who has last had a baby in this congregation? The last one. Well, I guess I was looking for the woman that had. Come. Could you imagine that this beautiful baby might have been born so that zygote, through the process of cellular differentiation, mitosis, and then the process of gestation, and then the growth, and then it's time for delivery. Suppose it were possible that the original plan was that you say, oh, it's time now, and you come to celebrate that it's time now, and that the baby, in the most euphoric way, that this becomes one of the most euphoric moments in your life. Baby comes forth in a way, and that any kind of anesthetization that's needed is already induced by the existence of the arrangement. It comes forth without the pain, without the pain. It would have been like that. Yeah. That's all. All I'm trying to say is that can you imagine? It doesn't have to be that way. The infinite God could have found a way to let. Oh. I will greatly increase your pangs in childbearing. And then to add, the ground won't support you, brother. So, verse 20, read verse 20. Read verse 20, because this is my hope. This can open the door to liberating us from the oppression of racism. Read the 20th verse, please. That is one of the most beautiful texts in the Bible. We have already been acknowledged as naked as a jaybird, they say. We've already been acknowledged as deserving of condemnation because of our violations of the rule. We've already been accused of constructing for ourselves garments to hide the reality of who we are, to make us look like we're something that we are not. And God announces the curses to the serpent, to Eve, and to Adam. And then, this is the process of metanoia. God, I guess, respected them enough. This text troubles me because it says that God made garments of skin for the man. And I have almost up until today thought of God going, getting some of the animals that God had made, slaying them, and taking their skin and putting it on us. No! Your skin, sister, is not extracted from some other. Your skin is made by God for you. It never existed ever before. It was made for you. Your skin, sir, not taken from her. There is no skin in existence other than that which God has made for you. And check. God is so infinitely resourceful that he took and made skin for her that looks different than yours, and even dropped a little extra stuff in to make mine colored a little bit more. God made this skin. Isn't that an important theological distinction? I always seem to have thought that God went out and slew some of those animals and then got their skin and put it on them. Theologically, there is your skin is the unique construction. The divine seamstress sewed the pieces together, and there is none like it in all creation. Now, Jane, the question we have to ask is, do you think those little fig leaves we sew together is any comparison to the skin that the Lord has made us? Do you get the point I'm making? The construction that we make to give us some sense of significance, of worth, it could not even compare with this skin which God has made for us. This is class, so sometimes the teacher asks people, if you had the choice of the skin you make for yourself or the covering you make for yourself over against the covering that God gives, I know the answer to this. How many would choose? But you can't have them both now. You can't have them. How many would choose this skin that God has made uniquely for us? Hands up. Is this classroom? Hands up. No, hands up, hands up. You. Now, the reason I'm asking you to raise your hands is because I'm getting ready to make a transition in the text. So that's why I did that. Now, see, and you will understand it right off when I tell you, now turn to Joshua, chapter 24. In Bible study, people in Bible study, they already know what this is. Not Joshua. Yeah, Joshua 24. I was about to go over to Judges. No, we're not going to judge anything yet. Some of you who know Balaam's story, I think a good place for us to begin, I usually begin at verse 14, but a good place to begin is verse 10. And it's the middle of a sentence, so of 24. Joshua 24, excuse me. Joshua 24. Thank you, thank you. Good pastor, good pastor. You're going to make a good pastor of that church. We've trained you well here at this congregation. Okay, so 364, good. Start reading at verse 10. But I would not listen to Balaam. Let me tell you about Balaam. Balaam was one who was called by King Balak to curse the people of Israel. And he said, I cannot do that because God has blessed these people. So anyway, he, even for money, would not curse these people. So that's where it starts, verse 10. But I would not listen to Balaam. Therefore he blessed you. So I rescued you out of his hand. When you went over the Jordan and came to Jericho, the citizens of Jericho fought against you, and also the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Girgashites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, and I handed them over to you. I sent the hornet ahead of you, which drove out before you the 2 kings of the Amorites. It was not by your sword or by your bow. I gave you a land on which you had not labored, and towns that you had not built, and you live in them. You eat the fruit of vineyards and olive yards that you did not plant. Now, 14th is where we really get into this. That was just background. Let's read this. Now, therefore, revere the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in faithfulness. Put away the gods that your ancestors served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. Now, if you are willing to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. That's why I asked you to raise your hand. So I was warning you, there's going to be a plebiscite. There's going to be an election. You got to decide whether you will serve the gods of the earth or the God of creation who has delivered us from bondage. Now, I'm getting ready to ask you to raise your hand again. And this is just role-playing because, basically, no. Would you prefer that I not ask you to raise your hand? Basically because it makes you feel like children or something in a classroom. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand. I'm going to ask you to do something more difficult. Raise the hand of your heart as you decide standing before Joshua at Shechem that if I have to make a choice between the gods of the earth and the God of creation who has delivered me out of bondage and who has sent his Son into the world to save me from perdition, is there any question? Ask your heart. If you stood between those two, which one would you choose? Would you choose the God of creation, Redeemer, Sanctifier, and living Spirit, guiding and empowering us day by day? I'm not even going to ask your heart. Your heart is already answered. Of course. No question. No contest. But there is a contest because sometimes what the heart says, the body and our living arrangements do not find themselves in sync. This is why even in a racist society, Christians all over this nation sincerely sing this song, which I'm going to ask you to sing with me. Lord, I want to be a Christian in my heart, in my heart. Lord, I want to be a Christian in my heart, in my heart, in my heart, in my heart, in my heart. Lord, I want to be a Christian. And Proverbs heard you singing it and says, maybe it was the psalmist or Proverbs, keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. It's amazing that so much stress in life may occur because the heart desires to be responsive to God's call. But the arrangement to keep on drawing us out of necessity, out of convenience, keeps on drawing us. And that's why, I guess, isn't it amazing how high heart failure is the cause of so much demise? When your heart wants to do one thing, but that your culture, your society, your race, your party arranges differently. And you got to squeeze your heart into the necessities and the niches that the culture has made for you. I'm going to skip over, because I said, your heart may say yes, but we don't always do it. And I was going to stop you by 1 Kings chapter 18, but I'm going to bypass that, because as I look at the time we're moving along, Elijah says to these people, why you all stand here limping? Choose you. Will you serve Baal or Baal, as they say, or will you serve the Lord? And so they pile up a new altar. The prophets of Baal cut themselves with lances. And then, I mean, you can almost see it in Mendelssohn's, you hear the music. The prophets of Baal are just doing this, but Baal will not answer. And then Elijah, with confidence, says, Lord, in order that the people might know that you are the God who can see them through, who can give them the deepest meaning and fulfill the purpose of their existence, let them see by answering by fire. And the fire came down and answered. The Lord, that is our God. So, when I speak of a great awakening, I am talking about gathering America before Joshua and asking these people, I don't know who you're going to serve, but as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Or before Elijah, and watching the fire of God burn until we say, as Americans, all of us, black, whites, Native Americans, Latinos, the God Creator is the source from which we hope to fulfill our destiny in life. That's what I would like, and that's what I'm praying for, because I do think it sure would be convenient if we could get that great awakening before 2018. It might take a little bit longer, but so you know what? If I were sitting where you are sitting, listening to me say the things I've said, I'd be kind of tired right long now. Why don't I just, can we come up for air? Can we talk about something that, give us something. Are you going to play something for us that just lift us for a moment? Anything, just right through here. I would love that. Oh, I'd love that. What page again? Thank you. You may be seated, and I'm just going to close my portion with Acts chapter 10. And the reason I'm closing with Acts chapter 10 is because there we are given the sense that it is only by the power of the Spirit that we are likely to move beyond the place of our normal conditioning to the place of God's demand and desire. So I don't think I need to read all this. Everybody knows this story about Peter going up on the housetop, and he's hungry. He's waiting to get something to eat, and a vision comes. And the vision comes, and there is a sheet let down with all sorts of four-footed creatures and reptiles and birds of the air. Then he hears a voice saying, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." But Peter said, "By no means, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is profane or unclean." The voice said to him again a second time, "What God has made clean, you must not call profane." This happened 3 times, and the thing was suddenly taken up to heaven. Now, while Peter was greatly puzzled about what to make of the vision that he had seen, suddenly the men sent by Cornelius appeared. They were asking for Simon's house and were standing by the gate. They called out to him whether Simon Peter was there. While Peter was still thinking about the vision, the Spirit said to him, "Look, 3 men are searching for you. Now get up, go down and go with them without hesitation, for I have sent them." So Peter went down to the men and said, "I am the one you are looking for. What is the reason for your coming?" And they told him that they had been sent by Cornelius. So let me go on down. The next day he got up and went with them, contrary to his pattern, and should not have even given them hospitality, because the rule was you don't provide overnight hospitality of this different ethnicity or at least religious group. But he went on, and all the people were gathered together, and Cornelius explained to him that the Spirit had led him to call for him. The Spirit recruited him to be a part of God's advancing universal embrace of love. So then Peter began to speak to them. "I truly understand that God shows no partiality, but in every nation, anyone who fears him and does what is right is acceptable to him. You know the message sent by God." But anyway, he goes on preaching, and then it says something at verse 44. That is, God recruited him even before he was fully capable of delivering the whole message. So the Lord gets him started in the sermon, and then the Lord takes over the sermon. While Peter was still speaking, the Holy Spirit fell upon all who heard the word. The circumcised believers who had come with Peter were astonished that the gift of the Holy Spirit had been poured even on the Gentiles, for they heard them speaking in tongues and extolling God. Then Peter says, "Can anyone withhold the waters for baptism from these people who have received the Holy Spirit just as we have?" So he ordered them to be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ. Then they invited him to stay for several days. Everything I've been saying to you, I'm not asking you to lift yourselves by your own bootstraps. I can't do that myself. What I'm saying is, let the Spirit lift you. Number 1, let the Spirit forgive you for anything your great-grandfather did. Let the Spirit forgive you for the benefits you derive from what your great-grandfather did. Let the Spirit forgive you for what you've done. Let the Spirit forgive you for what people close to you are doing. But then also let the Lord clothe you. Get baptized and appreciate this skin, this wonderful skin that God has given us, and let it be enough. Don't cover it up with no other stuff now. And then let the Lord lead you to join the parade. Not simply the one I've been describing, but that great procession. So way I guess I would normally like to close my part, and it is now 3 minutes to 3, and I should end at 3. So I'm going to sort of say, really, it's not the parade for Bobby Kennedy and Martin, though I think that would get us headed in the right direction. It is the great procession to the city of love that I'm calling us to do. I write this little piece of verse that says, get on the path, get on the path, get on the path. I'll meet you there. Let's get on the path and stay on the path. The Lord will meet us there. Get on the path of justice. Get on the path of love. Get on the path of freedom and peace. The Lord will take us there. To lift our weight from the heavy load, to soothe our feet from the rocky road, to wipe the tears from our weary eyes, to call all nations to a peace sunrise. Get on the path, get on the path, get on the path. I'll meet you there. Let's get on the path and stay on the path. The Lord will meet us there. Job got on the path, and the path got hard. His wife cried out, "Oh, don't touch your God." His friend, so-called friend, scandalized his name. He waited patiently until deliverance came. Get on the path. And Job got on the path. His path got hard. Oh, Esther the queen, oh, what beauty and grace, heard of the plot to destroy her race. She fasted and prayed. What path shall I take? I'll take the path of freedom for my people's sake. Jesus had to walk on the path one day, condemned to die for the freedom way. Cross on his shoulder, blood and sweat running down. He led the whole creation up the higher ground. Can't you see the path set before us today? Don't you hear the call to the peace and justice way? Follow the call from the Spirit above. Join the great procession to the city of love. Get on the path, get on the path, get on the path. I'll meet you there. Let's get on the path. Stay on the path. The Lord will meet you there.